everybody. This is Tina at the Third Stage Astrology channel. And we're starting the Heartbreak series. And I'm talking to my senior astrology student, Isabel, who is very reclusive, so she's phoned in. And she might remind me to enunciate clearly because it's an internet phone and she can't always hear me clearly, so please excuse us. But if you're just tuning in and you're having your heart broken by a Cancerian and you have got no experience of the Third Stage Astrology channel, I would recommend watching the video about the 3 stages of the sun in Cancer, because it will really fill in the details about the big picture. What the premise is of the Third Stage Astrology channel and the Third Stage Astrology system is that every sign has 3 distinct stages of development, and this is a very, very, very long-term process of development. Lasts for more than one lifetime, actually. And each stage has a completely different personality type. So if you're having your heart broken by a Cancerian, you're most likely having your heart broken by a 2nd stage Cancerian or a person who's in transition between the 2nd and 3rd stages. So we're going to talk about a lot of the challenges and difficulties of dealing with a Cancerian in a relationship, and just understand that there are a lot of really positive Cancerians out there. They're in 1st stage or 3rd stage, and they're wonderful people to be with. And 2nd stage Cancer, unfortunately, is the #1 most likely person to break somebody's heart. That's why we're starting with that sign. Now, there's different types of heartbreakers in the sign of Cancer. They'll do it in different ways. One thing that's important to know is that Cancer is the most emotional sign, the most sensitive sign in the zodiac. And it's particularly difficult to be a Cancerian man. Cancer women will break people's hearts too, but it's so challenging to be a Cancer man because men are more sensitive than women. Men are physiologically more emotionally reactive. It's wired into us for millennia. Men had to be the ones to react suddenly when there's a threat to the tribe or a giant animal running by that we're going to need for food for a month. They have to react immediately. They have to react intensively. That's the male physiology. So it means they feel their emotions more intensely than women do. They react more intensely, and their emotions go to greater extremes. And almost nobody knows this, but it is a biological fact. And therefore, if we take the most sensitive sign of the zodiac and we put a male individual into that sign of the zodiac, we're pretty much creating what you could look at as a really extreme birth defect, because the person is so extremely sensitive. And in 2nd stage Cancer, a person of either gender is struggling with their emotional nature anyway. They're struggling with being really sensitive. They're struggling with all kinds of trauma they don't really remember and they don't really want to deal with or face up to. So that makes it difficult for them to go through their lives, and it makes it really hard a lot of times to be in a relationship with them. So there are 2 basic types of heartbreakers, and then there are heartbreak situations that Cancerians can get into where there's third parties, and that's not always what happens, but there's a type or a situation where that can happen, which I'll explain. But there are basically 2 types. There's the type that is glomming onto you and doesn't want to let you go, really wants you to be there, wants to be in a relationship with you, but will not deal with anything in a direct way. There's a lot of extreme emotions, but they don't want to admit to being emotional or be reminded of being emotional, but there's all kinds of drama and either communicating without using their words. There's a lot of reactivity and manipulation that can, just drag you through hell. There's another type of 2nd stage Cancer that, because they can't handle their emotions, they can't let anybody get close to them. They're the more abandoning type of 2nd stage Cancer. And because I deal with a lot of people who are in painful relationship situations and a lot of people who've been abandoned, I have more experience with that 2nd type of 2nd stage Cancer situation, and Isabel has more experience with the glomming on type of 2nd stage Cancer situation. So, do you have any comments on what I've been saying so far?
Well, yes. It was funny because when you said that if you have your heart broken, and I felt like going, no, when you have your heart broken. But anyway, yes, it's interesting because I've known a lot of Cancerians. I seem to have karma with Cancerians, but I've never met the abandoning type.
Yeah.
I mean, I would sit there praying to be abandoned because I've had enough, but
Right. And you know what? The other type of person that's being abandoned will sit there praying to be engulfed
Yoish.
because
No.
it's such a painful abandonment, and that type of Cancerian will never explain themselves. They will say hurtful, weird, emotionally abusive stuff and then vanish and disappear. And they're wonderful when they show up and then they disappear again, and you never know what you're dealing with. And
Yeah.
they play all kinds of games. They can be really seductive, usually emotionally, maybe sexually. The female second stage Cancerians can be massively seductive that way. And, the big drama reactions of the glomming on type of Cancerian are pretty strong with women, but they're, all Cancer men are basically girls, whether or not this is what
I've said that. I have
said
said,
that.
and
Yeah.
I've actually talked to people. I've met, people in stores and all over the place, and somehow we get to talking, and they say they're with a Cancer. I said, and I will tell you every single time I have said, oh, so you're basically with a 12-year-old girl in her first period, and they went, oh my God, that's him, that's exactly him, and yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I have found that Cancerian men in second stage at that certain point, and I don't, 12-year-old, well, I think maybe people are starting to menstruate earlier, so say 10-year-old girl on her first period,
Yes,
moody, grumpy, and I think that they can abandon you and glom onto you at the same time.
they can. They definitely can.
Because we would never deal with any. Oh, and the other thing is projection.
Yes, yes.
It, I was the one that was more emotional. And I'm a fairly reasonable human being, and I have an air moon sign, which means that I tend to, if I have a feeling, I sit and weigh whether it's reasonable, and that's a whole other story. But I tend not to immediately. I have feelings, but I tend not to react immediately because I really just want to be reasonable.
Yes.
And whereas my ex would just blow up or stonewall or be completely irrational and nuts, and then in the middle of yelling and screaming and all of the drama that was going on, he would be telling me how emotional I was being.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I thought, oh my God, like, it's really gaslighting.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
will tell you, I remember talking to you when I was
Yes.
going through this and saying, I think I'm dimension hopping. Do you remember those
Yes.
conversations?
Oh, yes, I do. Mm-hmm.
It was so crazy making. I thought, okay, I
Yes.
know I'm not insane. I had sort of lived enough life to know that I was fairly sane. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, but we would go through stuff, and he would absolutely have memories of stuff about me that I didn't do. That, like,
Yeah.
we were supposed to have watched a movie together. I never saw that movie. He would be so insistent. And this went on for 13 years. And
Mm.
I basically decided I am not crazy, but I'm pretty sure we're in a different dimension, and
Yeah.
I actually don't know if that was true, but I just couldn't come up with any other explanation. It
Yeah.
was like, okay, we're hopping in and out. He's in another dimension watching Uli's Gold with me, which I in this dimension have never seen.
Yes.
And I would remember things he said. He'd say, no, that never happened. And then this stonewalling where he would literally plink himself down on the couch. If I said something, don't know what, never found out, 13 years, never found out what it was, something to upset him, he would shut down, literally cross his arms over his chest.
Yes.
If I tried to talk to him, he would look right through me. Sometimes he would sit there and close his eyes
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not talk to me. Okay?
Yes.
It was
Yes.
terrifying. It was just so crazy because I'd never experienced anything like that. I
Yeah.
think it was a very extreme example. I have, pretty much,
Yeah.
to be honest, avoided being with Cancerian men since that time. So that would be my experience. But so I don't know if things get that crazy with other people, but
Well, I wouldn't be
it was
surprised if
nuts.
it's reasonably common, and I'm sure Cancer women can do those same kind of tactics, do the same
Well,
thing.
my mother used to do. She was a Cancerian, but
Yes.
that's a whole other thing. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's
She was on
relevant
second
to this
stage Cancer too,
conversation.
so of course you ended up in a relationship with second stage Cancer.
I know, I know, I know. It's like I married, except didn't quite marry my mother.
Yes.
And it was like, what was I doing? But
Yeah.
anyway, that's because
Trying
you're
to
right.
learn.
They can just be a dream come true. They show up, and he pretended to be the answer to all my dreams.
Yeah.
So
Well,
sensitive
and I
to
really
them.
wanted to be, and they are so sensitive.
Yeah, I know.
And
I know.
See, a third stage cancer, or, you know, well along in second, third stage cancer, knows that their sensitivity is their greatest strength,
Yeah.
and can be very, very caring. Because if you go to watch the video about the 3 stages of cancer, in first stage cancer, the person's whole focus is on nurturing and building a family. They learn so much about emotions. They know how to be emotionally caring. They know how to really be giving. And a second stage cancer really can sweep you away with those traits. But
Yeah.
because at the end of first stage cancer, there's so much trauma that happens. A deep, thickened second stage Cancerian is really blaming anybody they have any kind of emotional attachment to for that original trauma, but they don't consciously remember that they're doing it. All they know is that somehow it's all your fault that they're unhappy.
Yeah, that's right. Everything was all my fault. Rain, weather, world war,
Yeah,
famine, locusts, whatever it was my fault.
yeah,
Right. It was exhausting. And, you know, as you know, it literally broke my heart.
yes, yes, yes,
Literally broke my heart. I ended up in the hospital with a heart attack.
yes,
Way younger than people usually have heart attacks, with no risk factors and, you know,
yeah.
zero. Shouldn't have happened. But this relationship literally broke my heart.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So it's a bit of a warning, you know, if people are in a real no-win situation and they feel they should keep going with it and they're not getting anywhere, there is a rule, and actually Thomas Leonard, the coach Thomas Leonard, came up with this, and he was so right. He was a Leo, actually, and you're a Leo.
Yay.
That when we're in a negative situation, it always costs us far, far more than we're aware of at the time.
Why didn't you tell me that at the time? Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
I'm
13
sure
years and a heart attack
later. From time to time.
Well, no, to be fair, I was working very hard, very crazy, stupid hard at trying to save the relationship, because that gets into a whole other thing. I felt like I had a karmic debt to him.
Yes.
I felt like I owed him something, and I really wanted to save him.
Yeah.
And that's another goofiness in my chart, which will be explained another time. But I really did. I felt like I needed to save him. And he felt like I needed to save him. And not only that, but he kept saying, you saved me. You saved me. And I kept saying, no, I didn't save you.
Right.
So I didn't want the responsibility, but inside I felt like I need to save him. So that's why I was talking to you, trying to save the relationship. And you were wonderful. You were trying, you know, you were explaining and helping me.
Yeah.
But now that I'm out of it, I mean, oh my God.
Yeah. And I mean, I do default, and relationship coaches in general default towards saving the relationship, working on the relationship, the integrity of the relationship, and not advising somebody to get out. That's just sort of the relationship coach Hippocratic oath.
And I wouldn't have wanted you to tell me to get out. I wasn't ready to get out. If I would, you know what? I got out when I was finally ready to get out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it took a while, but whatever needed to work itself out karmically needed to work itself out.
Yes,
so.
yes, yes. Yeah. There is that truth. But the thing is that, you know, it's so easy when we fall in love to try and save the other person. And when we're in second, third stage, and I know you were in second, third stage with your moon at the time, we often get involved with second stage people, and we're trying to save them. Because when we're in second, third stage, it's being conscious, being free, moving forward, getting somewhere with what we really want to be and do and know. We know that truth is digging for truth is the answer that's going to set us free, and we want everybody else to be free too. We're used to having a mate in second stage because we were in second stage for so many lifetimes. So we go to that second stage pool unconsciously in order to find that mate, and we try to pull them out. And they often want us to pull them out too, but the problem is you can't pull someone out of second stage. They have to do the work themselves. You can help them do the work if they want to do the work. And that's one thing that we'll talk about, which is how to determine, is this person in the transition? Because if you're with a second stage cancer and they're purely thickened second stage, they are not going to change in any way, shape, or form. You either have to decide to deal with and put up with what is going on as it is now, and in whatever form it takes, including abandonment if that's what's going on, or to realize I can't change this, I can't make this person be any different, and you really at that point have to save yourself. But if they are still struggling with a lot of this extreme emotions and all the dysfunctional reactions that we've talked about already, but they're wanting to find the answer and they're wanting to pull themselves out of it and they appreciate your assistance and your help, and they appreciate you giving them some kind of objective understanding, because poor second stage Cancerians have no objectivity. They think they do,
Zero.
but they
Correct.
don't have any, because they're lost in a sea of emotion. They can't get out. But with their in second, third stage, they're trying to find the answer and they're trying to get out. Then things can happen, then things can work, and you can work with this kind of situation. Even though it's hard, it will
Yeah.
slowly get better.
You know, when you talk about the emotional stuff, I remember what I used to say to you, and it's the emotional terrorism.
Yeah.
Remember we talked about,
Yes.
that was the part that was terrifying. I mean, apart from the fact that this person was much larger than me and had a very, 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 very explosive temper, I'm not a small person, and I'm pretty tall. And so I was never physically afraid in any relationship before that. But with this one, I was.
Yeah.
Because of the explosiveness. And so, as you know, I used to lock myself in the bathroom hiding, just doing crossword puzzles and readings just to get some space. And
Yes.
I remember he said that when I would read, just if I wanted to read a book, he would say that I was exiting the relationship. Like if I wasn't sitting there beside him watching TV. Now, understand, we weren't relating to each other.
Right.
We weren't talking. There was no connection, but I was in the room. He wanted me in the room with him.
They do. They need people to be in the room with them.
But he didn't really want to have anything to do with me.
Yeah. But don't say anything, and don't do anything that's going to upset me. Be there.
But exactly. But you know, unless you're a lump, you're going to do something to upset them, because everything upsets them. Everything upset him.
Yeah.
The wind. Honestly, it was crazy.
Yeah.
But it was the emotional terrorism. That was what I finally called it. That it was the fear.
Yeah.
Of the explosiveness or the stonewalling or the just. It was exhausting, and that fear. I just shrank and shrank and shrank, and just tried to make myself as small as possible.
Yes.
And I tried to hide as much as possible because I was walking on eggshells. I was afraid any minute there's going to be an emotional reaction. It's going to be loud. There will be arms waving. Things will get slammed around. Who knows what will happen?
Right.
And I didn't know why. That was the worst of it. I'm pretty good if I understand things. Did not know why.
Yeah, because they're reacting to all kinds of things that they make up in their heads, and they don't have anybody to share it with. They refuse to share it with anybody, and they're really in a world of their own in a lot of ways. But
absolutely, absolutely, totally in a world, and it was that's where I coined the term, an emotional terrorist. And my mother was like that too.
Yes.
Not exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
She was a female, and she was my mother, and had a whole bunch of other issues. But it was the emotional terrorism, and that's how my father sort of ended up becoming. You know, I mean, you know the story. Just so dutiful and taking care of her, because, oh my God, God forbid Anna should be upset about anything.
Right.
When Anna got upset, it was like a tsunami of wet and noise.
Yes.
And a lot of wet noise. It was just, and we all tiptoe. Except I'm not a very good tiptoer, as you know, with the Mars and Leo thing.
Yes.
So I was the lightning rod for a lot of trouble. And of course, then what do? I end up in a long-term relationship with exactly the same situation, because clearly I'm not that smart.
Well, we all choose people. So, first of all, when we fall in love from the subconscious level. It is not possible to consciously choose to fall in love with somebody, as a lot of people have found out. Gee, that man or that woman is so wonderful and so good and so special, and I wish I felt something for them, but I don't. Because it's the subconscious that falls in love. And it's the subconscious that does that in order to try to heal the traumas we're carrying with us, usually from our childhood. It's the primary place we're trying to heal traumas from when we fall in love. Sometimes it's from other lifetimes too. But the most important thing is to use your conscious mind to steer a pathway towards someone we can heal with, who's choosing to be conscious. Because if we go to a second stage person, they're literally choosing to be unconscious.
Yeah. Well, you know my imitation of a second stage person. Fingers in the ears going, la, 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 not listening, I'm not listening, it's not my fault, it's your fault, la, 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 not listening, not my fault, not my fault.
Yeah.
my imitation
True.
of second stage.
Now, there's a pattern that happens in all relationships, and that has to do with what our childhood was like in terms of how the people who loved us, who were supposed to love us, treated us. And there's only one of two sorts of negative experiences you can have with parent figures or caregivers, and those are to be abandoned or to be engulfed or invaded.
And I had both. There you go. There it is.
Yes,
But
it's possible to have both. I think I kind of had both too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes, yes, absolutely. And that was from my father was just never there, period. He was
right.
kind of abandonment right from the
Yes.
beginning. But it was from my mother. I
Yeah,
mean,
engulfed.
yeah, and
Yeah,
abandoned.
so if your predominant experiences of having been engulfed, then you're going to get attracted to someone who does that because subconsciously that's what you learned love is. It's not something you want the person who loves you to do, but it's what you're used to experiencing. If you were
Familiar.
primarily abandoned, you're going to get drawn to somebody who abandons you, even though that's the last thing you want, because subconsciously that's what you understand love to be about, is an abandonment. And these two types find each other. So the
Yeah.
engulfing kind of Cancerian was abandoned or felt they were abandoned. But the problem is that they magnify everything so tremendously.
Oh, I know.
So they're looking constantly for you to do the wrong thing of abandoning,
Yes.
not being there
Yes.
for them, not being right for them. And if they're the abandoning type of Cancerian, they were engulfed, but they want to be in a relationship with you. So they'll show up, tantalize you, flirt with you, love you, and then disappear for a long, long time, often creating a big angry fuss right before they leave, being really mad at you, not letting you know whether they ended things or not, or they'll end things in a huff and then they're back a week later. You're constantly just being jerked around. And they also have certain signs, have certain unconscious sort of magical powers. And one thing that Cancerians can do, especially if they're the abandoning type of Cancerian, is they send out a little psychic wall and they put the wall around you and they don't let anybody else come in. So they'll abandon you, and for some reason you can't find anybody else. Can't get it.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, I did not. Well, because that's not my. I didn't really have an abandoning Cancerian.
No, you
So
didn't have that type. Yeah.
interesting. So you can't find anybody else. So
They've
what?
claimed you and you can't find anyone else. So, and it doesn't mean you have to be trapped in that situation forever.
Forever? Yeah, really.
No,
I was
no, you
wondering.
can't. You won't be trapped forever. But for as long as you let the feelings still be present, even though you're trying to find someone else, it doesn't seem to work.
Wow, I didn't know that. Somehow, with all of our yakking, we have not
Yeah,
somehow that, or unless you did tell me and I forgot, because that does
right.
happen.
Maybe. I might have a long, long time ago. But again,
Yeah.
because it's not the type you were dealing with. But
No, but he would
they
abandon
mark
me
their
by being there.
territory and then they leave it there for when they feel like dealing with it.
Sorry, say that again.
It's like they mark their territory, which is the
Ah,
person that
okay. Yeah.
they're involved with, and then they disappear until they feel like dealing with it.
Wow, that is like classic narcissistic behavior.
I
I'm
suppose.
not saying Cancerians are narcissistic. I'm just saying
No, no.
that is
I
the
mean, most
mark.
of them aren't, but some of them could be. It can be a
No,
narcissist and be
I didn't
something.
notice that, but that is a narcissistic thing, I think.
Yeah, it is, but it's not. It's not like they're doing anything in their behavior to do that. They send out. How to explain it? It's like a it's like a it's like a telepathic bubble. It's a literal energetic frequency that they tend to put around the person they're engaged with, because this abandoning type tends to really be very strongly emotionally attached to the person that they're spending 2% of their time with. but they don't
Oh,
but they don't want to admit it most of the time, but they
right.
sure do not want anybody else to horn in on their territory. And so it's their will. They're almost sending out this will of, this is mine. Nobody else can be involved. Nobody else can have it.
Interesting. Well, it's funny, what you just mentioned reminds me that another thing Cancerians, and this seems to be, certainly I've experienced this with a number of Cancerians. I don't know if they all have it, but they have a remarkable, and this psychic bubble thing that you've just mentioned fits in with that. They
Yeah.
have an amazing instinct.
Yes, they do.
They can come up with say stuff that you go, oh my God. It's almost like they're psychic. I don't actually
Yes.
think they are. I think they have flashes of it,
Yes, exactly.
but they're so instinctive that they can tell it's quite remarkable. My mother could do that,
Yep.
and the ex, he used
Yes.
to be able to do that. It was really uncanny
Hmm.
and a little bit creepy.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
because you're going, what? Is he reading my mind? How is this
Yeah.
possible? I
Yeah.
mean,
And they'll also just the disappearing kind disappears and disappears until the day you feel like I'm probably finally pretty much over him or her and the phone rings.
mm.
Like, well, wait a minute, you're getting to the end of your rope now. I better pull you back.
And the other thing, I don't know if this is relevant, but just thinking about Cancerians, is you will never be forgiven for anything.
No,
They
that
may
is
pretend to
very
forgive
relevant.
you,
Yeah,
but they don't.
right, right,
They
true.
have a little chest, a little
Yes.
golden chest that they store their grievances.
Yes.
And they actually make room, and
Yes.
they like to take them out every now and then and
Yeah,
admire them as if it's a
yeah,
jewelry
I
box.
think they gloat over them. Yes.
Yes, it's. And then there was the time you did this, and then there was the time you wore that, and then there was the time you looked this way, and then there was the time you cut your hair in a way that I don't like. It was just, it was, and you didn't even know that it was a problem at the time. You will
Right.
find out much later when they need it. They bring out that box and
Right.
start flashing all those little gems of grievance that they've
Yes.
been storing, that they adore. They really like, honestly, I feel so mean saying this, but it felt to me with my mother and the ex,
Yes.
they really liked being unhappy.
Second stage Cancerians seem to. It's almost like they're getting a form of comfort from it because it's a security. Because at the end of first stage, their lives blew apart and they never want to experience something like that again. There is a resentment towards whatever caused that to happen, whoever caused that to happen, that they sort of project out everywhere. And they happiness is not reliable. Happiness blew apart in the past. Unhappiness, I can take that one to the
You
bank. I
can
can hold
count on it. It's there all the time, and what they want is something that's there all the time.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
I'm going to hold on to my misery because it's my best friend and it will never
Yes.
leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
It's funny
okay.
because my mother, who had moon in Cancer, and the moon is the sign you were before you're the sign you are now, she used to
Yeah.
talk about people like that. And she would say in a sort of sarcastic little way, if it makes you happy to be happy, then be happy. Meaning, if you want to indulge in all that negative emotion and hang on to it forever, go ahead and do it, because that's just a certain type of person that will do that.
Yeah.
So she has the memory, or had the memory of once having been that kind of person.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Yeah. Very confusing.
Yes, it
It's
is.
really
It's very,
confusing.
very
I felt
confusing.
like I spent 13 years walking on Jello,
Yeah. Yeah.
eggshells and Jello, like
Yeah.
depending on what
Yeah.
day it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there's another dimension that can happen in second stage cancer, and that's that Cancerians have two different archetypes of relationship or partnership in their subconscious. One type is the first stage cancer looks for a partner who is going to be someone to build a family with. So the first archetype of relationship, the original archetype of relationship with Cancerians is family oriented. This is my family oriented partner. This is the person I'm going to build a family with. And this is my security. And this is my responsibility. The second type of relationship, which is the type of relationship that a third stage Cancerian has, the type of relationship a person needs in order to progress and go forward if they have Sun in Cancer, is a relationship based on self-actualization, based on developing myself, knowing my strengths and abilities and identity, and learning with that other person. A second stage Cancer can feel the draw to both of those types of relationship.
You mean they can draw backwards or forwards?
Yeah, but they are drawn towards someone who has a lot of sense of identity, is a really interesting person, can be somebody that they could learn from and become themselves with. And that's part of why your ex would say, you saved me.
Yeah.
It's like you are such a unique individual and you are so self-actualized in so many ways.
Yeah.
And so that's where he was drawn to that in you.
Yeah. He used to say stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what made me think, oh, there's hope. Let me,
Yeah.
help you with this.
Well, they'll always do stuff. And because they can be so insightful, that instinctive knowledge or that instinctive understanding you talked about, it pops out sometimes. And they
Oh,
say
yeah.
the most brilliant things. They say the
Yeah.
most caring things. They,
Yes.
temporarily, for just a few instants,
Yeah.
open up that vulnerability and show that incredibly beautiful heart that's so deep and understands so
I
much.
know. I
Go, wow,
know. That's
oh
the
my God, we're
thing.
finally getting somewhere. And then they slam it shut again because
Exactly.
and being vulnerable. But
And
that,
then you wait. You wait for the next time it opens up. So you end up,
yes,
basically, you hang around in what I would call an abusive relationship,
yeah,
as it was,
yeah,
um, because you keep waiting for those amazing
yeah,
moments.
yes.
Yes, I know
And
it's in
neglect,
there. I saw it before.
yes. And neglect and abandonment, to get it to the back to the abandoning type of Cancerian, that is a form of abuse. Abandonment is a form of abuse. And a lot of
Oh,
people don't
sure.
realize that.
Sorry?
Abandonment is a form of abuse, and a lot of people don't realize that.
Oh, it totally is. Of course it's a
Yeah.
form of abuse.
So what can happen in some situations, I mentioned earlier, there's third-party situations, because Cancerians have this double archetype of relationship, and they may not be expressing both of those archetypes at any given time. I think your ex was looking at you as the self-actualizing type of person I need to be with, but I'm not going to learn from any of it. I won't let it in.
Right.
But sometimes Cancerians can be in a relationship that is a family-oriented relationship. This is the person I'll marry and have children with, even if they don't want to have children, because
Mm.
a certain amount of second stage Cancerians don't want children. Many second, third stage cancers do not want children. And there's often a very good reason for that. So we'll get to that in a minute, because that's important. If you're with a Cancerian who doesn't want to have children, and you do, it's a challenge, because a lot of times there's for their own development, it may be important for them not to have children, and that needs to be respected and understood.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the second stage cancers can get into that marriage, family-oriented situation, but they're bored. There's a
Mm.
whole other part of them that's not being stimulated. And so, I mean, not all Cancerians are prone to affairs at all. Some of them are incredibly monogamous, but some are. And if they are, they're going to be expressing that other side of the coin of being attracted to someone who's going to self-actualize them.
Right.
But they often, if in second stage, they won't leave the secure relationship. So they're hurting their partner they're married to or committed to. They're also hurting the person they're having an affair with, because they will go back and forth. They're going to really idolize and then abandon and take out a lot of frustrations on that person that they're having the affair with.
I don't know if this is relevant. It sounds like it is. This is not my own personal experience, but I have a friend.
Yep.
He's an Aries.
Yep. Yes.
You might know who I'm talking about.
I do know who you're
And
talking about.
he
Yes.
had a long-term thing, and
Yep.
I'm not sure it's still going on. It's in
Right.
some form or another. This guy is like a guy. That's
Yes.
another thing. A lot of
Yes.
second stage cancer men
Yes.
are like into guns and motorcycles and
Oh,
being
yes.
guys, and
Yes.
scratch the surface and it's a screaming girl, 10 years old. I'm having my first period.
Yes.
This is what it is. But anyway, this guy, very much a guy with a
Yes.
tool belt guy.
Yes.
This guy had a family, kids, the whole 9 yards, and
Yes.
was having a gay relationship with my friend for
Yes.
years,
Yes.
completely hidden.
Yes.
His family has no clue.
Yes. That's classic
This
second stage cancer.
is not to say that cancer men are going to have gay
No.
relationships. It's just
No.
that this guy clearly was either gay or
Right.
bisexual, and
Mhm.
that piece of him was not going to be played out in his marriage. And
Yes.
so he very happily played it out once a week with my
Yes.
friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I won't go into more details about that
Right.
because it's not my relationship, but I was like, oh my God, this is like, I wish people would be honest.
I know.
Just be
Yeah.
honest. It would
Yeah.
cause
Yeah.
so much less pain, but
Yes.
no,
Yes.
there was pain, lots of pain to
Yes.
go around. Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, the ex was not like that. It was mostly the drama.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Trauma and the not knowing what was wrong.
Yeah.
And because I didn't know what was wrong, that made me even worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was expected to know what was wrong
Mm-hmm.
without any clue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing. Zero. I'd
Yeah.
have
They
to
do that. They want
psychically
you to be a
intuit.
mind reader.
Yeah. If you don't know what's wrong, I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, that's a joke that, guys always say that about women, or they used to.
They really expect you. They really expect you to know what's
Oh,
wrong.
I know.
You are supposed to know,
Betrayal.
because it's
a
so
betrayal.
obvious. In their minds, The
Yeah.
truth is so obvious, and you're really hurting them and
Yeah.
betraying them, letting them down by wanting them to talk about it, because you should already know.
Exactly. And again, you've known me for a long time. I'm not that thick-headed. I'm
No.
fairly sensitive. I can
See, that's
usually
why
tell
they
if
chose you. That's why second stage cancer will often choose a very perceptive person, because they expect, okay, I finally found the person who will take care of my needs.
right, but there's no way to know.
No.
I am perceptive, and there was no
Yes.
way to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would just be literally like a flash flood.
Yes.
Everything would be fine. The sun is shining.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, oh my God, one time he just got completely upset with me because something happened with his car. We were driving, and he didn't talk to me literally for 2 days. We were on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly, I don't know why. And it was only years later that he went, oh, yeah, yeah, something went wrong with the car, and you didn't notice. And it wasn't like something went wrong with the car and it stopped working. He went over a bump and wasn't happy. I am not kidding. This really happened. He went over a bump, wasn't happy about what might happen to the car. And
Right.
because I kept chattering about something, I don't know, I was just, yes, okay, we went over a bump. The car was fine. But the fact that I didn't get as concerned about the bump or the car meant 2 days of stonewalling.
Yes.
That's how crazy it is.
Yes.
Or that's how crazy it was. I don't know how normal this is for other people,
Yeah.
but that to me, honestly, and here's what created the loop. Because of all this, I started to pull back further and further. I didn't exit the relationship, but I started to get very nervous about it.
Right.
And he at some point started to talk about marriage, and I kept going, oh my God, like there's no way on earth. I may be with this guy. There's no way on earth I'm making this permanent or legal. And of
Right.
course, the more I wasn't making it permanent or legal, the more he felt like I was abandoning him, and the angrier he became.
Yes. Yes.
But so we were stuck because
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't commit to somebody who was going to stonewall me for 2 days over what at the
Right.
time I thought was nothing, and years later found out was a bump.
Yes.
There's
Mm-hmm.
no way you're going to commit unless you're
Yes.
really, really masochistic. You're not going to commit
Yeah.
to that. I
Yes.
kept trying, and I kept thinking, like, if you can kind of get a little bit more sort of self-knowledgeable, and
Yeah.
then I will commit. And he was like, you're not committing. You're abandoning me. I hate you. I'm mad forever.
Right.
Still
Yes.
mad. Still mad. He's every
And
now and
the
then
other
I'll get
type
it.
of Cancerian will never commit.
I beg your pardon?
The other type of Cancerian will be the one
Oh,
who is not committing.
well, apparently, if he's to be believed, because a lot of his stories, I'm not sure, I can't substantiate
Mhm.
them, but apparently he was a bit of a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
He was kind of a heartbreaker until he found me, and then just somehow that changed.
Yeah. No, I mean, he certainly could have expressed the other type. I mean, everybody in second stage of whatever sign they are in can shift between different types of second stage responses.
Yeah.
So he
Well, I
definitely.
guess he found the one person that wasn't going to commit that easily. He went, oh, good,
Yes.
she's perfect.
Yes. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the ones who won't commit because they feel like by committing they're going to have to share their feelings, they're going to have to express what's going on in them. And there's no way to forget that. You should know that
Mm-hmm.
I will never do that. If you really cared about me, you would know that I won't open up like that, and I don't want to be caged, and you will accept that about me.
It's so funny because opening up is not being caged; it's actually unlocking the cage.
Yeah, of course it is. It's
Yeah.
true.
And he actually would say, not quite that. He would say stuff like, you know, you should know that I
Yeah.
don't want to talk about this. But he was the kind of person that talked about all sorts of stuff when we were together until he sort of we got closer.
Mm-hmm.
He was pretending to
Yeah.
be perfect,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I fell
Yeah,
for it.
he was also not getting to the point where he was as deeply emotionally attached, because as soon as they get deeply emotionally attached, they go down the deeper layers of their emotional nature and the old traumas that are buried under there, and then they start reacting to those,
So it was just a matter of time.
locking everything down and being
Right.
very self-protective, trying to be very controlling, being very reactive.
Uh,
Because see, the thing is, the midbrain, or what they call the mammal brain, that's the emotional part of the brain. And in all of us, that emotional part of the brain has the logic of a 3 or 4-year-old child. And in
on a
all
good
of
day.
us, in that part of the brain, every love object is the love object. So if your mom hurt you when you were 5 and you're deeply in love with someone, and that someone just moves their eyebrow in a way that reminds you of mom, suddenly you're going to feel that exact same hurt feeling that you felt when you were 5 when your mom hurt your feelings. That happens to everybody. The problem with Cancer is their emotional midbrain is 50 times bigger than everybody else's when they're in second stage. When they're in third stage, they're highly sensitive, they're highly emotional, but they recognize that as a strength. They have access to their higher wisdom and their spiritual self, and they're wonderful. But in second stage, they're almost in a PTSD scenario all the time.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Blaming everybody because they don't want to be in pain, they don't want to be vulnerable, they don't want to be hurt, and they're bumping into objects that are in their own imagination and being hurt by them all the time.
Right.
And if they're the abandoning type, they're avoiding all of that happening. So they're having this moment of bliss with you, but then they don't want to admit to anything after that, and they disappear so they can feel safe again.
Yeah. Oh, I just thought of something and I just forgot it. Sorry.
That's okay.
It was, yes. Victim and pity. Yes. Bookmark,
right.
Victim and pity.
Yeah.
The other weird thing that I noticed, and it might not be weird because, I've met lots of people in my life and, but I've found this with my mother and I found this with the ex.
Yeah.
They confuse pity and love, and they also like being victims.
Right.
They really, like, victimhood is a real identity. Now, to me, being a victim is like, oh my God, I don't want to be a victim. I find it humiliating. It's horrible. That's me. That's my own shtick, okay? But I'm sure there are all sorts of people like that. Whereas I found that these two people in particular, and I actually know a couple of other Cancerians that have this, but they're kind of more the sweet, adorable kind, so
right.
I've adopted them. But it's kind of like, look what has been done to me. Look what is being done to me. And again, it's part of it's one of the compartments of the box of grievances.
Yes.
And then I remember my mother used to say, "Don't you pity me?" She wanted me to pity her because for some reason she conflated pity with love.
Right.
It's
because Cancer is about nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
And in second stage, they can be anything but their oldest experience of life is that the nurturing function is the most important thing. When they become really developed, their nurturing is profound and massively wise and powerful. But nurturing is like parenting. So pity is like a nurturing or parenting thing. You take pity on someone smaller than yourself and you nurture them. You give them this maternal or love. I would say it's maternal because Cancer is more linked towards the maternal archetype.
Yeah.
And though male Cancerians can be very paternal, especially if they're in first stage, they're the most phenomenal fathers you're going to ever find. But, second stage.
I found that with both of them, it was really funny because the ex, this is one of the adorable things he used to do. He would insist on cook. I have lots of dietary restrictions, as you know, and he would cook for me. Insist whether I wanted to eat or not.
Right.
I was going to eat, and I was going to eat what he was going to make me. And he just used to love. It was almost like that. You know what this reminds me of, Tina? We used to talk about it, the 5 languages of love.
Yes.
And we were totally not in the same language because he would insist on doing things for me that he thought, okay, this is how I show her I love her.
Right.
But it's, that's great. I love that you're cooking for me, but because of the dietary restrictions, I don't put that much emphasis on food. I've had to stop.
Yes.
I just basically have to eat what doesn't make me sick, and I'm fine. I'm happy. It's good.
Right. Yeah.
But he would insist, and I had to learn this as a second language, which is that, okay, I know he loves me because he insists on cooking for me.
Right.
But he never learned my language.
Yeah.
It was his language or nothing. we were living in his country. We speak his language. That was it.
Yes.
And so my language, which is, as you know, it was words and touch. Well, that wasn't going to happen.
Right. Well, one of the reasons it's always their way or the highway, sort of, is that, again, in first stage, they were so focused on parenting that they are used to, it's an automatic unconscious thing of being used to being in the controlling or the dominant role. And they'll even dominate from a passive aggressive place as well. But there are other times when they're saying, well, I'm going to look after you the way that I see fit. which is what a parent should be doing, but they're not
Right.
a parent. So
Yes, and he would actually say things like, because you don't know what's good for you.
right, yes,
And
yes,
the other thing he used to
that's
say,
drawing from the
but
first.
my mother used to say this, literally the two of them said this like decades apart. I
Wow,
know you better than you know yourself.
right, yeah, and that's what. Well, the mother does know her child that way. Our father
Okay.
knows his child that way.
So
That's
just
an
for the
old
record,
drawing
because,
upon that old memory of
yeah,
being the first stage person who is in that position to nurture you and to guide you in the direction that's right for you. And that's lovely, but it's gotten twisted up after a
it's
while.
very twisted because I can honestly tell you that he did not know me better than I knew myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing, even with my mother, the
Yeah,
stuff she missed. She had a picture in her head of who I was,
right. Yeah, they do.
and there was a resemblance,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but no, not really. They
And when you
didn't.
get to I have to I keep bringing in the abandoning type because I want to keep a balance because there's going to be people that
That's
have.
right. You're right. I keep
No,
talking about this
that's
type.
fine. Because with the abandoning type, what they can do too is they can project neediness onto the person. So even a person who is not emotionally needy and doesn't freak out about the relationship is not going to be happy to be so intensely abandoned all the time. And so every time they try to just gently make things happen, send a little text, maybe I haven't talked to you in a few months, I'll send a happy little flower. And the Cancerian will go, oh, you're so needy.
Right.
They project that emotional neediness that they have but they don't want to admit to
Yeah.
because they always want to feel like they have a strong, often have a sort of a certain image they have of themselves. So for the male Cancerians, it's like you were talking about I'm the cool guy, I'm the macho guy, I've got all
Right. Right.
things that
Right.
be special. And for a woman, it can be their particular beautiful image, their particular dramatic form of self-expression, and that is makes them so special.
Yeah.
And they bring that forward along with all this other toxic manipulation and blame and all the other stuff until your head is spinning, you don't know what's going on. But they're not admitting to ever needing you or ever actually having a feeling, even though everything they're expressing is extreme forms of emotion.
Yeah.
They
I
will
have
not
to
admit
tell
that
you,
they're doing that. Then you're the one that's being needy, or
you
you're
know,
you're the one that's doing the thing they're actually doing.
yeah, it's so funny because, I mean, the ex and I haven't been together for years, and just this conversation
Yeah,
is exhausting.
yeah.
I'm fine. I'm just saying
I
I'm
understand.
going back there. I've been shipped back there, express post, and it's the feelings
So
and my energy
yeah.
level. It's just,
So let's talk
oh,
about things we can do to deal with them and cope with them, and then how we can find out if there's any potential hope. So
well,
how do we communicate with
bookmark back out of the room quietly.
back out of the room quietly? Yes.
You know how I always say that. Yeah.
And it's important to know that they communicate non-verbally.
Duh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
massively.
Yeah. That's
And
pretty
if
much the
kind of
main one.
have a feeling that they mean a certain thing with their particular nonverbal communication, that probably is what they mean. But you can't say, do you mean this? Is this what you're trying to tell me?
Well,
They go,
because you're
no.
supposed to know, because now they're upset because you don't know.
Well, and also they're upset because they don't want to talk about their feelings. They want you to get their message and respond appropriately without talking about it. You'll never get them to reason about things or to talk about their emotions or to analyze things if they are thick in second stage. So you have to learn how to read their sign language and respond to it in the way they want you to respond, or just disengage and not react to any dramatic fireworks they might express. You have to be able
Right.
to walk away from the situation and not let any of it stick to you.
Right. I did figure that out one point, I think, for
Yeah,
5 minutes.
yeah,
I remember I got so exhausted, I thought I just can't even react anymore.
yeah.
And I'm not sure it helped. Clearly it didn't because we're not together, but at least I kind of,
Yeah,
stopped beating myself up for a while.
yes. Now, if they are in second, third stage, then there's real possibility of healing, and it will take time. It's not going to be an overnight process because all of the emotional crap in there has a lot of inertia. It's been around for a very long time. But a ways you can tell that they're in second stage is they're going out and trying to find information themselves about themselves, not about you so they can blame you or point the finger at you, but about how to discover who they are, how to develop their mission in life, how to understand why they're reacting the way they are emotionally.
And what does that look like?
Well, I mean, it looks like possibly getting psychology books, or it looks like seeing something that's going on in the world that they don't like and starting to talk about or take certain actions, like joining groups that are about making changes in society or that are about, you know, making the world better in some way.
Okay.
But they are going to come to you and say, I've just discovered this about myself. What do you think? And if you say, yeah, actually, I do notice you do that a certain amount of the time, they
So
might
you let
freak
them
out.
lead.
Yeah, they'll probably,
Yeah.
if they're early in second, third stage, they'll get upset with you because they really they wanted you to say, oh, no, it's okay. You're fine. But if
Mhm.
they're actually in second, third stage, they'll get upset, they'll disappear, then they'll come back and they'll sort of come at it a little bit sideways. And then they'll discuss it again very, very gently. So they're slowly learning to look at themselves and learning to talk about their feelings, but they're going to be uneven about it. But over
Right.
time, and we're talking months, maybe years, they you don't want to be too many years, but you will see.
Well, if you're 20, it's fine. When you're 60, you don't. Don't.
Well, even when you're 20, I don't know if you want to spend 15 years banging your head against the wall.
No, probably not.
No.
No.
Yeah, but you will see slow, gradual progress, ups and downs. Certainly, it's a person who wants to be conscious, a person who's interested in the spiritual life can be a good thing, but it's got to be spiritual, not religious. Because if
Oh
it's
God.
about
Oh God.
beliefs that we're going to cram down someone's throat, that's religious.
Yeah.
Spirituality is about looking for true spiritual truth. It's exploring and being open
Yeah.
to finding answers, to having new experiences.
Yeah.
That's another indication of being in second, third stage. But even if they're early second, third stage, it can still be tumultuous. It can still be challenging. They can
Yeah.
still come and go or be, or express a lot of the things you were talking about. So you really want somebody that's going to start to talk about themselves and learning about themselves and learning about their feelings, and they'll bring it up. You
Yes.
don't have to bring it
Yes.
to them. It
Yes.
never works to bring it to a Cancer.
No, it never does. It never does. It never does. And you just reminded me of something I think that I have told you, which is sometimes you'll know something
Hmm.
and you can't let them know you know.
Right. Yes, it's true.
Um, like you'll know something, they have to come to you, and then you have to act surprised. Now
Yeah.
this never happened. I'm thinking of an experience with another, I think, transitional young woman that I lived with,
Yeah.
the daughter of my current guy.
Right.
Um, but I lived with her for years.
Yes.
She was lovely. We got along phenomenally well.
Yeah.
And I learned some techniques. So that's why I think she might be transitional. Because
Hmm.
she would come to me and she would open up. And it turns
Yeah.
out she told me stuff she didn't tell her father. She's super close with him. Because after being beaten up with a sort of relationship for many years, I went, oh my God, another Cancerian. How do I do this? But she and I clicked right away. And
Yes.
I just learned how to just listen.
Yes. Yes.
Just
Yes. It's
listen.
really
And she
important.
would actually, even now, calls me up for advice. So shocking, shocking. She does. She will
That's
get on
great.
the phone. She'll say, I need to talk to Isabel.
Yeah.
And she will ask me stuff like what to do here, what to do there.
It's
You
great.
know, and it feels like that it's bubbles. It's bubbles of the
Yes.
transition.
Yes.
And and that's where I also learned my how to back quietly out of the room thing.
Yeah.
I can talk about now if you're in the middle of something, I can wait. It's should I do it now or
Yeah. Sure. You can do it now. Hmm.
we used to cook together. Of course we cook together because that's what you do with Cancerians. But we used to make banana bread and all sorts of bake together and have fun. And we'd make banana bread and she would always use a fork to kind of, clean the batter out of the bowl, thereby leaving tons of batter still in the bowl. Because
Right.
if you know how to bake, you know that using a spatula is the tool that is preferred for getting batter out of a bowl. But
Yes.
no, she used a fork. And so I said, well, why are you using a fork? She said, I've always used a fork, which
Mhm.
of course, that was the reason. That's why I use a fork. I
Yes.
actually went out and
Cancerians
bought
love to
her
do that. They do things the way they've always done them,
always.
even if it doesn't make sense.
And so I went and bought her a spatula. She loved lime green, so I went and found a lime green spatula and bought it for her. She never used it. And having had enough experience with Cancerians and wanting to get along with her, I thought, she's never going to use this. She is going to continue
Yes.
to use a fork
Mm-hmm.
and also eat some of the raw batter. And I was constantly worrying about her getting salmonella, and she kept saying, I'm fine. And I just had to not argue.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was, even though I was standing right beside her, I mentally just backed quietly out of
Right.
the.
And even
And
in,
that,
and even in second, third stage, you have to choose your battles. If you're dealing with a second, third stage
yeah,
Cancerian.
I
Now, if you're dealing with
never
a third
backed.
stage Cancerian, they will change. They will not just go on these default settings the way earlier second,
No,
third stage
she still
Cancer.
uses the fork. Just so we're clear here.
Yeah.
She still uses a fork. I gave up on that one. I just sort of bit my tongue, shut up, and just didn't say a word because I knew it's not going to change. I've had enough experience with Cancerians to know this will not change.
Yes.
I
Yes.
did. I did come up with a name for her, like Bubby, like old Bubby,
Right.
and she laughed and thought it was funny, and she even referred to herself that way. So we turned it into a joke.
Yes.
She was able to respond to humor, but that was never going to change. I use a fork because I've always used a fork.
Yes.
And I tried to explain logically that you realize that the banana bread will be smaller because you're not putting all the batter in. Didn't matter. No, because I can eat it raw. And I went, okay, I can't win this argument. There's back quietly out of the room. That's
Yes.
it.
Right.
So I ended up getting along famously with her, still do.
Yes.
But I do believe she is, it may be early, I don't know, somewhere in the transition.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
Yeah,
sense. Mhm.
yeah. Well,
Yes.
you
I
know the.
mentioned earlier about if you're with a second, third stage Cancer and you want to have children with this person and they say they do not want to have children, that you must respect that. Now, the reason for that is that in the 3 stages of Cancer, for lifetimes, the person spends time in first stage Cancer, putting all their energy into family. That's their entire goal. So already, if this person who doesn't have children now is being presented with the idea of having children again, their soul saying, oh, I've done that so many times. Do I have to do that again? I don't feel like I want to do that again. Some second, third stage Cancerians do want to have a family, and that's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. But what they didn't get to do while they were in first stage is they didn't get to self-actualize. They were constantly putting all their attention into the children, which over time it creates a lot of positive traits, but when you go into second stage, they morph into manipulative tendencies because you had to learn how to manipulate sometimes if you wanted to get 6 kids to bed on time. It also morphs into projecting things onto other people and expecting that life is very codependent, because in first stage Cancer, their own needs were not important. The needs of the children were what mattered. That's what they were putting all their energy into. And so therefore in second stage, they feel like other people need to be as self-denying as they were, or they're going to put aside pieces themselves. Everything is out of whack as far as equality. There was no sense of equality in relationships. So a second, third stage Cancer is going to want equality in a relationship as they become more conscious. A third stage Cancerian has equal partnerships. But a second, third stage Cancer often wants to really self-actualize because they didn't get to do that in first stage. They don't have a strong sense of ego when they move into second stage. And this is another reason why they can be so defensive of themselves and why they hang on to things and do things the same old way all the time, because they don't really have a very solid identity. So in second, third stage, they need to know who they are, and they need to develop their strength. They need to actualize their mission in the world. So children are going to take a lot of time away from that. So really, please don't try to talk a second, third stage Cancer into having kids if they don't want to. You're going to be taking them away from their natural path. If it's something that's a part of your true destiny, you may want to consider that you may love this person, but you can love them in another way. It's not the person for you to create a partnership with.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because both Bubby, my nickname, and her sister, they're both Cancerians, and so funny. She said to me, she said, do you think my dad will be upset if I don't want kids? And
Yeah.
so having learned everything from my
Yes.
years of studying astrology, I said, he wouldn't be upset, and it's really important that if you don't want them, you don't have to have them. And you need to
Exactly.
know, don't have them for your mother. Her mother's a Cancerian, one of the
Yes.
second stage, really crazy people. That's
Yes.
another story.
Yes.
And so what I knew from having, like I said, learned from you, I was just encouraging her
Yes.
to self-actualize without saying that. It's just
Yes.
whenever she asked me something, it was pretty much, what do you feel you need to do? Do
Yeah.
whatever it is to take care of yourself.
That's
And in
right.
the 4 years we were living together, I mean, it's amazing
Yeah.
how much she changed.
Yes.
She
Yes.
she
Wonderful.
became a lot more careful. She stood up for herself a lot more.
Great.
And, you know, my guy says, wow, he said, really living with you has been so much better for her. Like it just worked out. And not that I'm so great, just so we're clear here.
Yeah.
It just that having learned from you about how to deal with a Cancerian that's trying to self-actualize, I thought, wow, I think she's open to this, and that's whenever she asks me anything, that's going to be my refrain. And it seems to have worked. Like
Mhm.
she's doing very well now.
That's great. Wonderful.
Yeah. But there was hope. Like, believe me, it wasn't me because she was ready.
Yes, that's exactly right.
She's
We
still
don't.
using a fork. Just let's be clear here. Still using a fork.
Yeah, of course, of course.
But she's moved. There's been
Yes,
movement
great.
towards third stage,
Yes,
or
but you
fork
really
and
hit the
all.
nail on the head, and it's so important to re-emphasize that. She did it herself. She was ready.
Yeah,
The people have to be ready,
yeah.
especially Cancerians.
Oh
You
yeah, oh yeah.
cannot, you will never change them. They'll just dig their heels in deeper.
No, you will never change them. It's water, water.
You
Who
can't,
wins,
you
rock or
can't,
water?
you can't entice them into
No,
things. You can't trick them into things.
no.
They're looking for trickery all the time anyway, and they can
Yes,
be highly
very
manipulative
suspicious. Yeah,
themselves at second stage. Don't try to out manipulate them. It won't work.
it won't work. It won't work. It just will. No, you're right. It won't. I mean, that's just not my way anyway. My
Yeah.
way is, that's another thing,
No, I'm
communication
just saying
style.
again for anybody that's watching.
Oh, I know. But it's just, it's, that's another, we were talking about, we weren't talking about communication styles, but communication styles.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a direct person,
Yes.
and you know, don't. It's not. The Cancer's the crab. They go sideways. Everything
Yes.
about them is sideways. So
Yes.
I had a boss who was a Cancerian, and she and I are actually quite close. I adore her, but she was my boss, and I had no idea what she was talking about pretty much 98% of the time, because she would go off on these. I have no idea how we work together. I think it was all intuitive. I somehow, because I'd had so much experience with Cancerians, I kind of really didn't know what she was talking about, but I kind of knew what she wanted, so I kind of did what she wanted without knowing what she was talking about, which
Right.
for me was, by the way, very stressful. But
Yeah.
she ended up being quite thrilled with me and trusted me more than anybody.
Yeah.
And we ended up forming a very, very close bond. Now, to be fair, I do think she's transitional. I don't think she's second stage.
Right. And she saw
Um,
that you really put the effort in, which is good.
She did. She did, and she was able to appreciate it. But
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like I was in a position to say, I'm sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you explain it in a way that I understand? I just sort of thought, yeah, that's not going to work.
No, no, it
I
doesn't really.
just thought, do your best. Just do
Yes.
your absolute level best.
And
And
really that's what it's like, because again, if there's any second stage cancer, one of the things I say about second stage cancer is they're emotionally autistic.
oh my God, yes. Yes.
For someone
Not this woman. This woman, well, yeah, actually she was. She wasn't, yeah, now that I think of it, she was.
and so they don't communicate the way everybody else does. They just don't.
No, it's
And
sideways. No, I don't
for anybody who
know.
doesn't know how autism really operates, because people, I think most people know that truly autistic people are kind of in their own world and you can't communicate with them. But autism actually occurs when a person's senses are on overload. So an autistic person is seeing 10,000 times more light and color and images than a normal person, 10,000 times more sounds. They're overwhelmed by this constant sensory input.
Oh boy, I totally understand that.
And a second stage cancer is overwhelmed by the constant emotional input and all the emotional stuff that's churning around inside them also. So
Right.
they really do create their own language in the thick of that maelstrom of this flood of
Okay.
water that they're living
Yes,
in.
yes, 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 yes.
And they appreciate, if not, they don't want someone to ask them, can you explain this to me? Because they can't. So they
No,
do
I
appreciate
just
someone.
explained it. This is how it's like Robert Frost. When asked to explain a poem, I explained it with the poem.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
can't
That is
do it
so
any other way.
perfect. Yeah,
I'm not
what
sure. I don't
kind of
know if he was
Cancer is
a
he?
Cancerian.
Or was he?
What?
He wasn't a
I'm going to
Cancer.
check. You keep talking, and I'll look it up.
Okay. Yeah, but they really do appreciate it if the person does their level best to try and understand what it is they're saying, even if they don't do a perfect job. And if
Yeah.
the person's a more positive second stage type, or they're in second, third stage, they will deeply appreciate that you are trying and you're really not putting them on the spot.
Yes. I think that's true because instinctively they feel you're doing your best.
That's right.
Mind you, that didn't work with thick and second stage because I was
No, if
doing
they're
my best
really
in that
deeply
system.
thick in the worst part of second stage, as second
Not,
stage progresses and it gets towards the end, that's when the most negative patterns are in place. And I mean, the person is it's just kind of trapped in a hell of their own making in any
yeah,
sign in late
yeah,
second stage. And there's not much you can do. They just have to,
yeah,
it's like the spinny toy has to keep winding itself down until it finally
yeah,
crashes.
yeah.
Start looking at life in a different way.
Okay. Robert Frost,
Yes?
Aries.
Aries. Oh, wow. I had
Of
no idea.
course, I was quoting an Aries because,
Right.
what I
Well,
do. March.
Aries is a bit like Cancer in the sense that you can't really tell them stuff too easily,
You
and
can't tell an Aries anything.
some
I've
you
had lots
can,
of that. We'll
but a
do
lot
that
of
another
Arians
time.
don't want to be told what to do, and they also will tend to state stuff, and that's that.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
No, they just ignore you. They don't get mad at you. They just ignore you.
Yeah.
You don't have the same emotional drama. You will just be
No.
roundly ignored.
Right. True. But anyway, we're not talking about Aries. We'll do Aries later.
We will.
Yeah. But at any rate, I think that sums up Cancerian heartbreakers.
Did we talk, did we, like what to do if you're in a relationship with one? We've dealt with that?
I think we did. I mean, in terms of how to cope with it or communicate with it,
Yeah.
most of the time, if you're in a relationship with a thick and second stage Cancerian, probably the best advice is run.
I said run right at the top of this. I don't
You
know if
did.
you heard me. And that sounds like such a mean thing to say, but really, I guess the bottom line is you either accept them completely,
Yes.
totally, the way they are,
Yeah.
accepting nothing will ever change. This is
Yes.
the way it is. The way it is right now is the way it will be on your deathbed.
And
If
do
you're
your
okay
best.
with that,
Yeah. And if you're going to stay with them, do your best to interpret their smoke signals. Don't ever confront them. You can
never.
be yourself. Doesn't mean you have to be a doormat. You can step away from stuff, walk out of the room if you need to do what you need to do for you. If they're abandoning you, go off and do something else with your life because you can't get them to come back right now. But interpret their smoke signals yourself. Don't send them if it's an abandoning type, don't send them big, long, giant texts about your feelings and what you've interpreted about them and you're trying to get through to them. They'll shut you out.
Yeah.
Just do
Never
your
talk
best,
about feelings.
understand what they're saying and respond accordingly. And if you don't do a perfect job, they will appreciate the effort. And you'll slowly negotiate a different kind of relationship. It's like you are trying to have a relationship with a person who speaks a foreign language and will never learn yours. You got to learn as much as you can of theirs and make do with that and then make the best of it.
One proviso to that, I think thick and second stage, the worst part of it, if you do your level best, they won't appreciate it.
No, I know that. But a lot of them, if they're not super, super thick and second, then you will be able to make things better.
Okay.
But it's still not ideal.
No.
They're
And
thick
if you
and
can't accept them the way they are, an
yes.
unchangeable rock,
Yes.
then you have to go away.
Yes.
That's I do believe it's your only choice.
That is very true. Yes.
I suppose homicide is a possibility, but it's probably not a good idea.
Yeah, it has some side effects you might not really want to experience.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's our Cancerian heartbreakers story.